Along with individual experts, Surgeon Masters brings you life improvement strategies in 10 minutes. These proven principles and strategies are easy to learn and can be applied immediately, allowing you to practice your best. Here's your host, Jeff Smith.
Welcome, everyone. On this episode of the Surgeon Masters mini podcast, I have with me Dr. Stefanie Simmons, Chief Medical Officer of the Lorna Breen Foundation. Stefanie, thank you for your hard work in this important area and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, I have been trying to track down the Lorna Breen folks for quite some time, and just a lot of really cool events has brought us together. I've been passionate about physician wellness for well over 10 years now. And although we have a little bit different practice backgrounds, I'm excited to hear about what your experiences have been and what kind of ignited your passion.
Thanks for that. I'm an emergency medicine physician by training. My interest in physician and healthcare worker well-being really started in residency. During residency, I switched specialties. I switched from anesthesiology into emergency medicine. That switch really sparked some introspection in me that I think up until that point, I had sort of had my nose to the grindstone, my head down, just doing what I needed to do to get into medical school, to get through medical school, get into a great residency program. And it really made me start to think, wait, what do I want to be accomplishing in my career? What is it that I'm passionate about in medicine? And then, unfortunately, during residency, two of my co-residents had pretty profound experiences. One of my co-residents had a spouse that went into premature labor, HELP syndrome, and found himself the father of a preemie with a wife in the ICU, right? So I was watching him go through his internship with that home situation and was starting my own family at the time, and just had an immense empathy for what he was going through. And while he was trying to become a physician, also managing this complex family life. And another one of my co-residents and close friends developed a seizure disorder after getting encephalitis on her peds rotation and had to finish her residency with this new medical condition that impacted her ability to practice in all environments, right? At any time, any place. She really had to negotiate that. At that time, as they were going through this, I thought, boy, there really should be more help for people in the navigation and more support in residency. We're in such a vulnerable position as residents, needing to get through our program, having that from medical school and undergrad. And so that was really the genesis of my interest. And at the end of my residency, I had my own experience. So I had two children during residency. And after I had my second child, I had what I suspect was postpartum depression. And I say I suspect because I was so terrified of what it would mean to my career to get therapy or treatment that I did not at that time. In retrospect, I wish I had. The beginning of my career would have been a lot more straightforward if I had. That really crystallized some of my ideas about what I think should happen for people and how we should be supporting each other in this profession and also supporting our learners.
Yeah, I mean, as you were sharing that story, I could imagine my experience, the co-residents would have been left behind in my experience and not supported. And I think myself and many others can relate to the fact of how we chose to kind of not recognize some of our own challenges and just sort of avoiding getting any help. So then what are you doing now? Tell us what exciting things and messages that you want to share with our audience today.
Starting from those experiences early on, and I will say all three of the people I just spoke about have had wonderful careers. So it just goes to show that not leaving people behind when they're having a rough patch is a really good thing, both for them, but also for the House of Medicine and for all the patients that we served moving forward. I started first leading a small medical group in the Midwest on their patient and clinician experience, and that expanded into a role leading the patient and clinician experience for a 26,000 clinician medical group. And that's what I was doing when the pandemic started and the Dr. Lorna Breen Foundation started. Part of that role was leading a team of 15 physician coaches. And one of my coaches was getting his MBA. The co-founder and president of the Dr. Lorna Breen Foundation, Corey Feist, was giving a talk at that MBA program about the foundation. And my coach called me and said, hey, Steph, you really need to talk to this guy because you talk about well-being in the same way he talks about well-being and what needs to change systemically to make things better. So I called the co-founder of the foundation and told him what I was doing at my organization and asked to be of service. So about 2 years after that, a year and now 9 months ago, I became the chief medical officer of the Dr. Lorna Breen Foundation. We have a twin mission to help healthcare workers access mental health care and prevent suicide, but also to reduce burnout for the healthcare workforce. I truly feel passionate about this work and honored to be in this role.
Fantastic. I would say there's some misunderstanding of the Lorna Breen Act and then what the foundation is doing. Why don't you share like the key things that you think, resources or things that people can do to be either helping ourselves or helping our colleagues?
Sure. The Dr. Lorna Breen Healthcare Provider Protection Act was passed 3 years ago and provided funds to 45 different institutions to pursue programs and research in healthcare worker well-being. It also provided funds for the AHA's Healthcare Worker Suicide Prevention Guide and for CDC NIOSH's Impact Wellbeing Guide. And the act is about to sunset. So we're in the process of advocating for the reauthorization. So this will be the Dr. Lorna Breen Healthcare Provider Protection Reauthorization Act. It will be for 5 years with a focus on removing administrative burden, which is defined as really those things that get in between the healthcare worker and their patient that make it harder to provide care. And we know from healthcare workers that that is one of the drivers of burnout and the obstacles to providing optimal care that can be really frustrating and at times disheartening. That's where we are on the act. And there'll be a link in the show notes for folks to write their representative to reauthorize the act. We also have been working with licensing and credentialing. And so working on a state level to change state medical, nursing, dentists, and pharmacy licensing applications to remove invasive language about past mental health care, diagnosis, and treatment. And also working with hospitals and health systems to remove that language from their credentialing applications. We just had an update to our maps and to our list of the hospitals that have changed their credentialing. We now have 29 states that are consistent with best practices. We know that next time we update this, we're going to have a couple more. And 375 hospitals have changed their credentialing application. Now, we know that there are more than that out there, but what we do is if a hospital, health system, or state will give us their application, we'll do an independent review against best practices, and we will give them the Champions Challenge badge for licensing or credentialing, which can serve as a signal to the healthcare workforce that it's safer to receive care in those organizations and in those states. In terms of what individual healthcare workers can do when they sense that they have a mental health condition, that they want to seek care, they can really find out what the rules are in their state for their organization. Almost everywhere, simply having therapy and having that therapeutic relationship with a counselor is not going to require disclosure if there isn't an impairment or an impairing diagnosis. Having said that, the criteria that we use for the Credentialing Champions Challenge is that the organization only ask about current impairment and not about past diagnosis or history at all, or any non-impairing diagnoses. So I encourage people to seek evaluation, to seek care, but also to start with peer support. Talking to a trusted colleague can be a great way to understand you're not alone. Many of us are dealing with the same struggles, the same existential questions that come up when you care for people in the sort of liminal space between life and death and in trauma, and also try to integrate that experience with being a whole person and having a family. So I encourage folks to talk to each other. Coaching can be a wonderful option if you want a thinking partner to go through the process with you. More and more hospitals and health systems are also offering resources. So I encourage you to find out what your hospital or health system offers. And if you feel like they don't offer much, we have the Impact Wellbeing Guide through CDC NIOSH that we'll link in the show notes. Is a great place to bring to your healthcare administrator and say, hey, here's where to start, or to get the credentialing application changed at your hospital. We do have a toolkit on how to do that. You just become part of the solution, because this is a dilemma that's going to need an army of the healthcare workforce and to address and to work together with their leaders to make progress on.
It's really fantastic stuff. You've touched on many issues that we at Surgeon Masters have been working on with peer support, peer coaching, just talking about the subjects, because none of those conversations that are sort of open, just supportive conversations are really an issue as far as credentialing or licensing. So it's fantastic stuff. Maybe you could share just kind of what the key take-home messages that you had today.
Well, there are things that individuals can do for themselves to address their mental health, to take care of themselves. But really, there are systems issues that need to be addressed to change the environment that people work in, as well as removing those barriers that are currently existing for healthcare workers to access mental health care. So there is real progress being made. There is real change being made. Don't assume that it is not safe for you to receive care without looking, because it may be very safe depending on your state, your hospital, and your health system. And take care, everybody.
Thanks so much, Stefanie. There you have it in a little more than 10 minutes. This is Jeff Smith, along with Dr. Stefanie Simmons. Until the next episode of Life Improvement Strategies for the Surgeon Who Wants More. Ciao.
Now, take 10 minutes and put your plan into action to practice your best.